It's the 3rd of October, 2025. Coming up on today's Global Intelligence Agency Operations Report. An interesting conversation takes place between some deep state generals and an operative. This man that had apparently been part of the secret space program so long, his first trip off Earth was in the 6th century BC. You heard that right, BC. This led to some really interesting revelations for the worldwide military. The debt clock for all of humanity has nothing to do with the U.S. debt clock website. Instead, it was in the Red Basin of Wyoming. Find out more about what was supposed to happen when the clock stopped and how does this relate to the government shutdown. And there is more to the rapture than just an internet rumor. Find out the truth behind the story and why the deep state was hoping for, well, a miracle.
Tired before the day begins? NAD Plus levels drop 50% after 40. NAD Plus helps your cells bounce back fast. Most supplements give precursors. NAD Plus skips the breakdown, delivering direct, bioavailable power. Support your energy, metabolism, sleep, and stress levels at the cellular level. Join the NAD Plus revolution. Start your journey to a healthier you. Subscribe today.
Well, it's October now 4th, even though the report here says the 3rd, at least here in the States. And sorry about that. We had a hard time trying to get the report out last night. There's a lot going on out there, and we had so many technical difficulties, we just decided to restart it today from the beginning. So here we are. Oh, lots to report today, so you might want to grab a cup of tea or coffee and sit down and and listen in, because this one's really kind of interesting. Okay, just a little bit of cleanup work before I get started. We have received several emails asking us about our skincare. Our skincare formulations are complete, and we are now working on packaging and production. We have ordered a lot of the packaging already, so that should be in about 4 weeks or so, hopefully, 4 or 5 weeks. And with any luck, we should be able to make it by the holiday season. That's our hope. So at least with the first few products, and then we'll probably release additional products every couple of weeks, just based on where we're at and equipment and production. And of course, tariffs didn't help, and the de minimis, removing the de minimis, which is the minimum amount to be shipped into the U.S., has caused a lot of chaos amongst suppliers and supply chains. You see, we source a lot of our stuff from all over the world. It's not just here in the U.S. A lot of these skincare products involve both Eastern and Western healing modalities, or you would say medicinal plants. So it's been quite challenging for us to, we have to wait quite a while to get some of these things restocked now. And it's been a whirlwind thanks to a bunch of crazy secret space programs and the government. They make decisions to implement things like tariffs and taking out the de minimis rule, where, there's a minimum amount before you start having to look at tariffs. And all of those things went out the window with absolutely zero infrastructure to implement it. But then again, they like chaos. Maybe their brain is full of chaos or something, but we're making it. We've got a lot of the stuff already in stock, so we have been starting to pull everything together now in order for large-scale production. excited about it. We have already been sending out some small amounts to various people that have volunteered to be part of our consumer group. So that's been a lot of fun to get some feedback from people, especially on our acne and blemish formulas and our Sculpt and Tone, which is getting rave reviews because it actually does what it says it does. So we're excited to bring all of that to you, and we're working really hard in our spare time while we're working on everything else. So it's been a lot of fun for me, you know, getting a little time in a lab and putting all this stuff together and trying to get all of these ingredients into a usable form. So, you know, it's been nothing but joy. At least that's that one bit of joy I have in my life, is putting all this stuff together. So it's been fun. Okay. Now, the other thing you might notice in the next week or two, you'll be seeing our marketplace website change. That is us. We originally had set up our marketplace to try and bring additional vendors on board with that format. That is not going to work. So we have developed an entirely new site for our actual marketplace, which will involve all of you and your good work out there too. And we are just working on the final algorithms for tax calculation in, you know, over 200 countries. So it's taken a little bit of time and a lot of hard work on the part of everyone involved in putting that together. So just a special thank you to Zolt and Raquel, who have worked really, really hard on all of this, and also Lewis over there in Australia with his programming skills. And, you know, we've got a little team built that has been working really hard on bringing that to you. So just a little cleanup to answer some questions that I know have been coming in quite a bit lately. You know, and I hope that you all enjoy the fruits of our labor real soon. Okay, so now into what is really going on in this world. You've probably heard a lot of rumors, and I know I mentioned it in the last report, about a rapture happening, and, you know, the rapture is going to happen. It's pretty much across all religions now. It's all over social media. And, well, it didn't happen this week. That was supposed to take place, I guess some folks are saying Tuesday of this week. That obviously didn't happen. And it is supposed to now it was supposed to take place then on the 1st or 2nd. That also didn't happen. And now it's supposed to take place on the 6th. Well, this is a kind of a trickle-down effect for what the secret space program is trying to do. You see, anything they've had left where they could possibly send out broadcast messages to humans is waning. And we believe that the rumors were started based on something they were trying to do. And I believe that the people that were spreading those rumors were also involved in that, you could call it MK Ultra for Everyone program. So let's talk about the trickle-down effect and how the government shutdown in the U.S. is tied to that. And you know, I guess you would say the Canadian Post shutting down or going on strike was also part of the plan. And there are several countries in the world where we have heard had a random shutdown. You know, all of a sudden by Wednesday or so of last week, they were told they needed to shut down their whole country. So banks were closed, and, you know, and this is, you know, for lack of a better term, a little bit of a result of the generals meeting that everyone is talking about. Now, in both alternative media and the mainstream media, we have seen a display of generals talking about the military. We have heard about the fact that there is no military readiness. There was a lot of discouraging comments made by some of the leaders of military on on the news, which has caused a lot of disruption in patriot communities and that type of thing. And that's exactly what it was meant to do. You see, we have a bunch of secret space program operatives who are trying to run a single government and, well, the entire world for that matter. And they're not doing a very good job. They act and then think. They make statements, then try and do. They are so overconfident and ego-driven that everyone follows along with the bouncing ball, well, until maybe they don't. But everything you saw for public consumption in that meeting was just that. They had orchestrated a narrative. They claim they're in control of the media. You know, they're claiming that they're in control of a lot of things. And honestly, it's just a bunch of ego talking. And by ego, well, an AI directly to their head. Now, after some disappointment of hundreds of generals on Wednesday, and then, of course, again, that was pushed, just give us 24 hours, they said, and this was pushed off until the 2nd. And I had some people reach out to me. Some of these people are part of, for example, the Order of the Jesuits. Some of these people are a part of other groups. They are actual humans, and also part of military groups as well, not only in the U.S., but elsewhere. And they're trying to figure out what's going on. So since everybody was together in the same place, and by the same place, you've got some in New York, you've got some in D.C., you do have some, obviously, in Virginia and other places, but predominantly they've been gathering quite a bit. And they're like, how many times are we going to do this? Something is wrong here. These people say all this stuff is going to happen. They do everything they're supposed to do. And they were all promised varying top positions for their work in the alleged new order, which never happened. Everybody now has been pushed off to the 6th, like I said, they would be. And, which is Monday. So, is anything going to happen on Monday? It is a full moon. The sun will rise and it will set. And those that are still waiting for something on Monday are going to be again disappointed. And there's a definitive reason now. Things are becoming clearer as to why the deep state secret space program operatives do what they do. This information started trickling down amongst the ranks as people were searching for answers. It's time they get some answers. Why is it that we know, and you know, because I'm telling you exactly what's happening? For the first time ever, it's not just a bunch of a narrative that's spreading throughout the alt media. This is pretty much truth. 100%, actually. So, searching for answers, they went. Some reached out to me. I answered their questions. There's supposed to be further calls and talks this week. Some starting today. We'll see. Waiting to see if they're going to give us a call today, but we'll see. But nonetheless, as part of this searching for information, and what's really happening, we kind of pointed them in the right direction. And by a right direction, I mean someone that actually is willing to answer their questions, is not afraid of any order anywhere or rank and file or anything like that. And I've heard this guy talk a few times on varying calls, but most of the time, the only people that knew this man existed was, the secret space program. The only people that would call this particular person was, they'd call him for advice. What's going to happen? What's going on? What can we do to make this happen? And I called this guy, and for this report, we're going to call him the cowboy. He speaks with a southern drawl when he talks on the phone, and he's told the secret space program, in the militaries of the ACIO, many times that you've done hitched your wagon to the wrong horse, as a cowboy would say. But I couldn't figure out why, they would call this guy. And they didn't call very often. They sort of didn't like what he had to say. He was telling them they're going in the wrong direction. Everything is pointing to this, and you're going that way. And, they don't really listen to anybody. They have their own thoughts and their own views, and there's a real reason why that happens. But in this particular case, there was enough information put out on a phone to let them know that this guy existed. And if they want some real information, they need to call him. Mainly this all came about because, a lot of people wanted to call and talk to me and ask me what's going on and try to find a way forward and what am I willing to do and what am I not willing to do. And I said, well, you're going to need to get some information first. And I gave them the name of a particular person that I know has all that information. That's number one. Number two, I gave them another bit of information that let them know that we're going to talk big business, and they need to have an economist on their side who can crunch numbers and, look at flaws and plans, and that if they are planning on having taking a part in a way forward for all of humanity, then they need to understand planetary security. Fair enough. They are in the business of security. Even though recently secret space program operatives chose to rename places like the Pentagon to the Department of War instead of Defense. That was done by them as well, because that's what they planned on doing, I guess. There's a reason why they decided to do that too. We'll talk about that in a second. But anyway, I pointed them in the right direction to gather some information from people that they know and possibly people that they didn't know existed, but people that are also in this defense business and war business and have been for a really long time. So the conversation was very, very interesting, even for me, because I knew about this guy. I just wasn't exactly sure, what kind of roles he played in different positions, for several hundred years. I know, you're thinking there's a person walking the earth several hundred years. They must have access to the med beds. Well, no, it doesn't quite work that way. So, generals and meetings. We're going to finish up kind of talking about that, and then I'm going to get into the conversation with this guy. So the secret space program believed that there is a war chest. And the rumors about this war chest, they claimed that it was from Bush Sr., and that it had been used before during his tenure within the order, and that they could get access to this war chest if, of course, we had a global war. It is also the reason why they had to declare the Department of War no longer defense, because they were all promised that they would have top positions in the new war global martial law system, meaning they would have positions higher than any president. They would be running countries. They would be the ones that were now in charge, and there would be lots of money to follow. Now, in order to access this war fund of Bush Sr., they, of course, would need to funnel that all directly through Well, in this case, the Pentagon. And then the Pentagon would feed every other military in the world in order to achieve the objective. Does the secret space program ACIO group understand what a war chest actually is? And who are they at war for? Absolutely not. Let's just say we'll talk about that a little more in a minute, but war is not about countries fighting countries. War is not about humans and guns and all the other things that they think it might be related to. War is a byproduct of chaos. That is it, and that is all. War generates power for certain beings who then become superior in their own realms. This has absolutely nothing to do with paying militaries in any way, shape, or form. So if all of these generals were gathering because they were told it was a Bush Senior war chest, they were wrong. The war is against us, against humanity, against the planet. That is the war. It is a war for your mind, a war for your soul. Those are spoils of war and the only things that chaos ever wanted. So, thinking this was going to happen, because it also corresponded with a holiday that was known as the Day of Atonement in Judaism, no. They also don't understand things like a debt clock, and they don't understand what that is and what the debt really is that people are supposed to be atoning and or paying for. And whose debt really was it in the first place? I can tell you right now, it wasn't us Homo sapiens. They also told, and have been telling them apparently, which came out of some of the back meetings happening behind the scenes, they told all of these generals and the Jesuit order and everybody, not only would they have top positions, but they also told them that they are the guardians of this planet and of the galaxy. Sound like a movie? Well, might as well be, because the script, at least the script in the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, was kind of funny and you know, it was a good movie, something to watch. But in this particular case, they told them they are planetary security. The ACIO is planetary security. Now, the front for that here in America is called the Space Force. And I call it the Wasted Space Force because, quite frankly, they're a front organization, just like DARPA is a front organization for them as well. So was and is Langley, you know, in the CIA, and GCHQ over in UK, and, you know, the Russian SVR, you know, they're all front organizations for the same group. These people have a big problem, though. And I'm going to clear up one rumor, first of all. And number one, they are not guarding our safety or the safety of this planet. They are here and have sworn oaths and pretty much aren't human anymore to entities to ensure the asset flow from this planet continues to go to the mirrored version of this planet somewhere else. That power continues to flow to infinity and beyond, forever. They are here to ensure that we are proper food source, not only for Ethereum and breath and other things, but we are a proper food source for someone else. They are here to ensure that the space-time travel grid stays in place, because the space-time travel grid is the only way a dark being can move, or an inorganic being can move from density to density and realm to realm and reality to reality at all. That is their job. They are not here to protect a country. They are not here to protect a human. And they are certainly not here to help our military in any way, shape, or form. And I'm going to explain to you why. Our militaries and intelligence agencies, and this is plural, from around the world, including the NSA, Nine Eyes, and Five Eyes, and all of the stories you hear, on the internet, secret groups, and Jesuit military orders, and Knights of Malta military orders, and all the military orders that exist on this planet and their respective intelligence agencies are under the impression they are here. In a lot of cases, and some higher ups not so much so, they're here to serve an order. In some cases, when you get a little further down the ranks, they believe they're here to serve their country. That is it. Now, if you are listening to this and you are a military general or colonel, and you've gone into other countries and avoided, quote unquote, a coup, or finished off a coup, or a change of power, or removed a dictator, and all of the things that you've been told that you are doing, then you understand one thing. After this occurs, there is a cookie cutter process that happens, meaning it's a script. There is a book of war that you're handed, and you are told to do the following things, and these are the only operations that you are told to run. The recipe for war comes from a book, and you know it. Especially intelligence operatives on a higher level, they know it. They know that book. It is the book of war. If you step outside that book and that recipe, you are terminated. You have done what is called gone off the reservation. Now, going off the reservation means you have not followed the script. You did not follow the recipe. Now, if there are hundreds of pages in this book, you are told to follow, this is the war of page 342, page 2, mixed in with a page 6, 10, and 14. And that's where you're supposed to go, and that's what you're supposed to do. Now, the reason why it is this way is because you are not defending anything. And I'm sure you know this by now. In the cookie cutter process of war, there's also an alleged rebuilding process that happens. You are told that you are to teach countries how to defend themselves. That's what you're told. Doesn't matter which country you're from. You could be from Russia, China, US, doesn't make a difference. Also UK. You are to train their military forces to prevent this from ever happening again. You are to provide them with equipment, loads of weapons sales, and all of these types of things. But the one thing you don't do, and you know this, if you are a military general, colonel, and otherwise, when you're listening to this, you know you never give anyone equipment, rules, strategies that you can't overcome at any moment in time. And you know this. It's part of the program. Now, do you think for one red-hot second that the secret space program, knowing that they're defending those that have oppressed this planet and many others for eons, that is who they are defending and what they are securing? Do you think that ever let the military get any kind of equipment where they could actually defend themselves or a country against them? They drive you around. They're the ones giving you the orders. They're telling you where to go, when to wait, when to sit, and when to move. They orchestrate the speech that you saw online. And we all saw it. I didn't listen to it because I don't have time for that, but I got the Cliff Notes. The script about calling the military weak and all of this kind of thing, that was all perpetrated by them because they wanted your soldiers to turn against you. They need you weak. Because quite frankly, they're pretty weak right now too. So this is all part of the plan. So now everybody has been, all these generals and everybody has been pushed off until the 6th, just like we said. But this time it's a little bit different because they're all starting to ask questions. They want to know what's really going on. And it's not just military generals and colonels. Remember, the orders and all of these folks and operatives also are financial operatives in banks, in central banks, in treasury departments, in Bank of America, in Wells Fargo, and in all these banks. For many years, they have been the ones that have been trying to hold things together just long enough until that day ending in Y and a promise of a big financial payout happens and comes. And they are stressed to the max right now. So they're all getting together and having these private meetings after the massive failure, and they want some answers. I've had some people, like I said, reach out to me and ask me some questions, and they have reached out to others and started asking questions, and they've been pointed in the right direction, and now they have a more clearer view of what I'm telling you. So as part of this clearer view, they talked to this man we know as the cowboy. And the cowboy is kind of an interesting character because he explained exactly who he was in this call. And I was really shocked and surprised, really. I mean, I knew he was kind of up there in the world, but I didn't realize exactly, what he had done and where he had been. So he explains to these people, the cowboy, he explains to these people that he has been in the secret space program for a long time. He explained that he was one of the originals, therefore some of the programs that they have run on the heads of the younger folk, he was not involved in. More importantly, he actually ran some of them for a long time. He explained that his first trip off the planet was about the 6th century BC, and he's been coming and going ever since. And if he had stayed on Earth, he explained that he would be several hundred years old by now. He also told them that he ran a cyborg division out of Andromeda for quite a while. And by running a cyborg division, it's not just about a bunch of robots walking around like the kind of Elon Musk technology we see in the news. It's about you. And it's not only about you, it's about the secret space program and all their operatives. You see, he told them by about the 1960s, anyone that had been recruited after that time went through a much more stringent program in which their brain is no longer their own. They were all tied to an AI system that can be manipulated and changed at any given moment in time from the facility in Andromeda. He said this is the reason why the secret space program just keeps going. It's like, say you found an old record from maybe 80 years ago or 100 years ago, and that record gave you instructions on how to wire a home, to bring electricity to a home. You would have seen things like these strange fuse circuits that would go into fuses that would go into electrical panels, and some very different codes than we have right now. You would have heard them say, this is the asbestos, protection on the wires to prevent fires and all kinds of things we don't use today. But the record isn't going to change with the times. The record just keeps replaying it over and over and over again, giving you instructions that are just, old. Now, he also explained to these people that for the last several years, that AI system no longer has anyone running the cyborg division. He explained that he's not willing to do it because, you see, he wasn't a part of the program, at least not on that level. Therefore, he wasn't playing anymore. He was done. He's been kind of hiding out ever since, not interested in participating. But there are certain people on this planet that they need to keep alive because he knows how it works better than anybody else, at least as far as the crazy human section does. So nobody bothers the guy. They use him as a resource. They ask him questions, and he tells them like it is. Probably a waste of air, and I'm telling them that they, hitched their wagon to the wrong horse was probably all he wanted to say to those people because he knew it was going to go in one ear and out the other. So these people are literally trying to kill us all. So by rapture, they definitely, gave it a go in every way possible, and they have been for quite a long time. They need to win the game. And their modus operandi is to serve either the black, the white, or the red groups of beings out there in the omniverse and deliver souls. Yours, mainly. And the one who wins and delivers the most souls in one day wins the game. Allegedly this AI tells them stories to their head of great power, and great control, not only here, but also in the omniverse. They would get all of their equipment back. They would be able to travel again, all that kind of stuff. And it just keeps going on and on and on. Now, there are pre-programmed dates within that AI, just like there are pre-programmed instructions on how to wire a home 100 years ago. And it just keeps running. And this is where all the days ending in Y come from, to their brain. They believe that this full moon is going to be the ticket to something or other, and nothing is going to happen. And another day will pass, and there won't be any power, just like there won't be any power to your home if you try to wire it the way we did 100 years ago. Our lines and electric lines and telephone, and power poles and all that, it doesn't work. That doesn't connect anymore in any way. So, now at least we understand why the hamster wheel. And the good news is that some of these people, actual Homo sapiens, that were on this call asking all kinds of questions also understand now as well. So this has resulted in a lot of subsequent meetings since this call took place last week. Or earlier this week, I should say. Geez, time flies. Earlier this week, so a couple days ago. And now they have an understanding of who they are dealing with. The general consensus at the moment is we gotta get rid of these people. And how do we do that? Well, I've been doing the same thing that you're saying. You've come to that conclusion just now, and I've come to that conclusion a long time ago. They are non-repairable humans. This is what they are called throughout the entire omniverse. They still are desperately trying to do their security job. It's the reason why we have all these disturbances. As they try to control in some way, shape, or form the cyborg human overlays that we have on our Homo sapien. And as those overlays go away, the less they're able to put a dent in anything, but they do not want to fail on their job. I mean, who knows what they tell their brain when they do a good job or do a bad job, or, but they're living in a time where the quantum reality is changing. We're moving away from a debt system, meaning we do not give power, to stones in a quarry in some river in the middle of the omniverse. We don't do that anymore. There's been a few hiccups, over the last couple of weeks, some of them pushed by them, and some of them were just a matter of a dead man switch of things we remove. So I understand the level of uncomfortability that you're going through, and I'm sorry, but it's better than death. Let's put it that way. So on that note, now we have a better understanding of the crazy people that are trying to run your respective governments. Doesn't matter what country you're sitting in when you're listening to this report, because it's all the same people. And I can tell you, we have had a global military for a long time, a very long time. We have also had global intelligence for a long time, a very long time. There is no fights that happen between countries. Mainly they're provoked. That's it. They come from the war book. You follow your page in the book. The other country follows their page in the book. And that's how we end up here. So some of the questions, they've been asking now that they got this, they're mind blown after this call, and the guy told some war stories and, wars that have happened over thousands of years. He's been to the past, he's been in the present, and he's been in the future, and he understands where we're going. And more importantly, he understands the quantum changes that are happening on this planet and to you. He understands that they're never going to be able to reclaim that power, and even if they did, there's no boss of theirs on the other side to appease anymore. And unless they hitch their wagon to the correct horse, they aren't going anywhere. But they're not going to get it because their brain is not their own. Their body is not their own. Their mind is not their own. And they are extremely twisted. So now let's talk about what did happen. So I'm glad to see you're all still here. We weren't raptured or otherwise, or thrown into the pit of hell or the lake of fire, whichever story it is that you're told that you believe. We're just fine. But it wasn't without a slight incident. So an odd thing started to happen on, I would say that was Wednesday. And an odd thing started to happen. Part of the reason why we didn't have a report is because, well, something did start to appear in Yellowstone Park. Really, really strange looking half-hollow tree started to appear. It wasn't just one-sided either. It also started to appear on the fake Earth on the other side of the omniverse, whatever's left of it. So half of the tree both tree trunks were red, very fire red. And if you looked at one of them, inside the hollow was kind of a milky white substance. And on the other side, there was definitely a black substance. And this was a computer-generated tree of good and evil. You see, they did have an intention, a very large intention of thinking, this is the chatter amongst all the generals, they believed that we were going to have a massive catastrophic event. And part of that massive catastrophic event was supposed to occur in Yellowstone Park, where they were told that the volcano there was going to erupt. Well, not exactly in this realm and not in the materium, but yeah, there was something that was starting to erupt over there. However, they were under the impression it was actually going to be an eruption. Now, if you know anything about the volcano in Yellowstone Park, you'll know that that would have actually annihilated most of the United States. And the further away you were from the incursion zone, the less ash you would have. But the sulfur and everything, it would have been worse than a nuclear bomb. Major catastrophe, really. And this is what they were looking at. They were looking at it from a logical, human, geological standpoint. The next thing that this would have triggered would have been an issue with all of the tectonic plates. Not really understanding why. But this particular tree, although hollowed out and filled with a milky substance, which never made it into this density, thank God, also had massive roots that started to grow throughout the planet just below the Earth's crust and underneath the tectonic plates. Now, as the tree's roots, if they were allowed into the materium, hence the reason why it's red for an artificial reality, would have caused a major shift in every tectonic plate. So we would have seen a massive worldwide earthquake. So now, lucky for us, this is not our first apocalypse. We are now serving apocalypse number, I don't know, probably at least 80-something at this point, because, they've tried to do this so many times, maybe not in this way, but in other ways over the last 4 years. Each time it always ends with, in one case, it was, everybody sat down in the golden chair and thought that they had the golden booty. Remember that? And, they're going to have a position of power. This is what everybody thinks and everybody is told. But it absolutely doesn't happen. So then they move on to the next possible date of apocalypse. This tree was to measure artificial good and artificial evil. You could call it the tree of good and evil. You could call it a tree of knowledge. You can call it a tree of life and the judgment time. However, it's all artificial. It's not real. You see, this is what happens when an AI controls your head, for these people. Because this would have never gotten off the ground. It just can't make it here anymore. We've made that much progress to where even you can't manifest it, which is the reason why they start all those rumors on the internet for you, so that you will manifest your own death. Yep. You ever notice how, you're looking through your feed on your phone and there's 15,000 different ways you're going to die? You mentioned maybe in your house walking around that you're going to do a liver detox or something, and there's 9,000 ways that, you're going to die of fatty liver and this liver disease and that liver disease, and all the ways that you need to go seek medical attention if this is happening or that is happening. It's all subliminal to try to get you to feed a machine to make something happen in the secret space program's favor. But you see, even those that have access to the stones that control reality, or used to, obviously it's not working. They're trying to affect us with frequencies. They're trying to make you feel dizzy, sick, drained of energy, all that type of stuff all the time, every day, all day. But the good news is that usually we can find it now and end it fairly quickly. They tried, oh gosh, I think that was Thursday night. They tried to bring in a bunch of what you would call demons, that were the next phase in the rapture plan. Because, of course, if you weren't raptured, then you would be stuck in, hell on earth, right? So, fabricated goo babies in weird shapes started showing up in a few places in the world, and here being one of them. And that didn't last very long, because they cannot manifest it into the materium anymore, because they do not have control over a reality. They have minimal control, if any at all, over any kind of alternative realities that may exist, but they don't exist here. So they hit that fifth density wall, the fifth density of you, fifth density of Earth, fifth density of everything, because there is now some shields and protection in place. So if you have the ability, whether it be in your dreams or in reality, you have the ability to see through dimensions, densities, which some people do, then you probably had some interesting dreams or had some interesting meditations the other day. And that was part of the fear program that never actually came to be. So congratulations, you have now survived apocalypse number 88 or whatever number we're on, and we're onward to the fog. So is there going to be a rapture day and chaos and an eruption of a volcano and all of this stuff coming on the full moon? The answer to the question is no. But you see, they really like the moon on their side. They do. The moon for them is their god. It sends them frequencies to their head. It allowed them to access AI systems, in the past, where, and I use the term past lightly, in another reality, they would be allowed to access reality overlays on you and on Earth, and they could cause quite a bit of chaos during times of, when they were ordered, by the then AI controllers. So they like this time, we're of course within 3 days of the next full moon, and they're going to give it a go, and most of their stuff's not working. And matter of fact, as I'm talking to you at this moment, it's total flipping chaos out there. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about the reason for this. You see, we've been breaking down the debt system. That's my main focus right now, because all things are tied to the debt system. And by debt system, I don't necessarily mean, you have credit card debt and a mortgage. That's not the kind of debt, although that's a part of it, because they need to keep you moving like you're a hamster on a wheel, generating that power for somebody else. They need to keep you stuck in their societal program or societal realities so that you'll continue to lose power. You'll feel defeated. You'll feel no joy. These are all the things they need to extract from you, transmute into something else, and use it for their very own power to not only control Homo sapiens and humans, to control planets, and actually to control realities, which they're desperately trying to reinstall here. It's just not working. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the real debt clock. Now, you guys will go online and you'll say, oh, look at the U.S. debt clock or the Fed debt clock or whoever's debt clocks. Then there's a climate change debt clock. And, there's a debt clock for everything out there, isn't there? You kind of wonder why that might be. You see, the origination of debt always came from create the problem and be the solution. We've indebted ourselves many times as Homo sapiens, and not without good reason in a lot of cases, really, But the original debt and the original sin also kind of went hand in hand a little bit. So, times that we have indebted ourselves, we lost our moon. Then the Savior comes in, It's the savior program. Marduk comes in and the Draco come in and they make a deal to get you some kind of a water control, situation so that the Homo sapiens would survive, create the problem and be the solution, knock the moon out of the orbit and then put another one in its place that is far worse than the original one. However, we're grateful that we are alive, so we are now indebted to that species or another species or another species, and on this went for eons and many, 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 many years. But the root of debt was quite surprising, when we started getting down to the base root platforms of how debt actually worked. So the original debt, especially of Homo sapiens, because that's the most important, this is what we're looking at restoring, right? Came a long, 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 long time ago. You see, you remember me talking to you about the fact that wisdom had disconnected and decided he was going to create his own realities, mostly out of death. So, if you haven't listened to that, you can listen to the last few reports. Along with wisdom came a being called Leviathan. It was one of the ancients, been around for a long time. And as soon as wisdom was disconnected, Leviathan came to be. Leviathan is an AI-generated being. It was one of the first he created. And Leviathan is, a demon. You can kind of look up the information on Leviathan if you don't know. I know I've talked about it before. But it is also the being of chaos. So when wisdom was disconnected and we were no longer connected to the blueprint of reality, the blueprint of source, the blueprint of God for creation, chaos kind of ensued. You see, nature has a natural balance to itself. When it is of source and it has its own natural rhythm, we have the perfect amount of trees. We have immortality. We have great skin suits. Our souls are our own. Our minds are our own. It's not just about the humans either. It's about things we understand. Balance has nothing to do with the balance between light and dark in this particular instance. Balance has to do with enough trees to generate enough oxygen to keep the rest of life on this planet alive. We need a certain amount of bacteria. Therefore, trees shed their leaves, and then it creates a compost, and then that feeds the soil, which then feeds the plants the following spring. We have plants that generate their own seeds, and then we replant those seeds, or, the bees take care of a lot of the work too. So there's a lot of balance of nature when you really think about how things happened here originally. We lived in basically what you would say is a Garden of Eden. We never wanted for food. We didn't have chaos. We understood the blueprint of source. No, you can't plant so many trees that there are no places for humans to live. No, you can't, build so many homes, of wood that we don't have any more trees. Therefore, we don't have enough oxygen. We understand this. We also understand, especially in parts of the world, that the animals, their natural habitats, where they live, how they eat, how they survive, the more we mess with those habitats, the more they will migrate into other areas that are undesirable. We understand that there's a balance. Now, when disconnected from that blueprint and an understanding of that balance, and you as a celestial being don't have the source blueprint, you might be, for example, a person that loves bees. Therefore, you create 100 times the amount of bees we need on Earth. And now we have an overload of bees, and, there's not enough flowers, and there's not enough trees, and there's not enough things, and now, all the bees die, or maybe you're thinking, well, I really like boats, and then you create way too many boats because you're a celestial and you have the power of manifestation to the nth degree. Think about the chaos that would ensue if everybody could manifest everything they ever wanted instantaneously in nature. I'm not saying that it wouldn't be lovely where we would have food on the table and there would be no hunger and all of those types of things. Of course, that would be wonderful. But you have to be connected to the original blueprint of Source, or the new blueprint for that matter. You see, that blueprint is the key to everything. And believe it or not, when the tainted blueprint went away, it sent the other side into chaos too. This is something that kind of happened this week. So when chaos took over, chaos is the whisper in the wind that tells you to do things you might normally not do. Chaos also has another aspect to it called ego. Your ego wants you to have a nice car and the best car in the neighborhood and the greenest lawn and and all the things you see on TV. This is all programmed too of chaos and ego. Chaos and ego report to death. Now, think about that for a second. Too much of a good thing sometimes is bad. They say, for example, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Well, but you don't need to eat 10 pounds of apples in a day. That's a bad thing for your system. Think about what would happen, to your system if you were to do that. So good things in balance are good for everything, everyone, all plant life. It's good for everyone, and animals, of course, and everything stays in balance. But chaos wants to make sure we don't have that. Ego makes sure that we don't have the balance either. Chaos creates ego so that you'll feed the system constantly. Think about how many people work their whole life for the perfect mansion, the perfect house, the perfect car, just so they can prove to everybody that they're the man or the woman. Think about it. Or the they, But anyway, the point is that, that you're the human, you're the Homo sapien, you're the one to look up to because you got it all. Chaos also, and ego also feeds power. By power, you are giving away all your power and you're giving it to something else, which then powers an AI system, which allows them to have control over your investiture plane. So investiture is not real, meaning royalty, now looking up to the royalty, and you could even say royalty is not just kings and queens. Royalty is also those that are in power over you. We strive, in some cases, a lot of people, because of ego, strive for power. Both ego and chaos are a byproduct of death. They create death. They create death of the soul because a lot of people are willing to sell their soul for it. Unfortunately, in your case, if you're not subject to any of these things, they did it for you. So there was a time when the introduction of chaos, ego, and ego came to this planet, and we damn near destroyed all of life by over-manifestation and over-creation. Therefore, the first simulation was created on this planet. The first simulation was created on this planet, let's just say, you could call it within the gray areas of the law, very gray, create the problem and be the solution, right? So the solution is now presented that, well, we need to do something to stop these humans from destroying themselves, the planet, and the entire omniverse, because we were travelers at that time. Still are, some of you are. But we were travelers at that time, and we created complete and total chaos everywhere. We fell right into ego and chaos and death. So we were actually creating death. Now, the simulation, well, allegedly, it stopped us from killing not only our entire species, but allegedly the planet and many other species to go along with it, both of plants and animals, and not only on this planet, but elsewhere as well. But we didn't create the problem. But they were sure there with a solution. So, those that run the simulation made a covenant and basically said that, well, we are keeping you alive, therefore you are in debt to us. We have prevented you from killing yourselves, so you are in debt to us. And then the debt clock started ticking. How long would it take us to pay them back? It's what gave them the original control over us. The financial system eventually followed as well. We gave everything. If you are going to survive and your family's going to survive, this is where they whack you right into the root chakra, and they say things like, you create your own reality. You create the matrix. They whack you right in that red root chakra and take away your fire, your spark of life, your motivation, your sense of security, stability, and grounding constantly with chaos and ego, just so you can survive. Matter of fact, that chakra didn't even exist. They moved it there. They moved it there. We did not have a red chakra. We only had gold chakras. They even gave you a false god to worship, with power, purple power, given to somebody else. They took away your original connection to the Superium and blueprint and gave you false power, both things you fear and things you strive to be. All manipulated. They took away your creativity and your joy. They took away love. Think about how much we fear love. You can say you don't, but you do in some ways. Think about all of the manipulation just to feed the following things. Because without these things, there is no artificial reality. There is no alternative universe. And that is what the secret space program strives to protect. Security equals control, but these people, once their AI was disconnected from their brain, they have no flipping idea what they're doing. And I almost swore. That's not a very good thing. Mike will yell at me. But things they took from you. Every chakra represents a certain amount of things, and there are many different definitions of your varying chakras in your body, but when you take a look at what they're supposed to be, where you're supposed to focus on, think about those things creating, well, number one, artificial realities, many worlds, artificial realities in which they exist and control, overlay planets with, take control over beings, and planets are beings too, and especially Earth and Homo sapiens. The power. Power gives them all of your Ethereum, converts it to an energy source, and then it powers all of these other things. Because without power, you don't have creation, do you? Nope. Takes away, they control your mind and your consciousness and replace it with things like ego, chaos, death. We all focus on some of those things sometimes, don't we? We make statements out of all of that. We do things sometimes for those reasons, even when we try really, really hard not to. But you can't, because there was too much influence at the time. You know? We create time and space. We create our own prison, unfortunately, which means that we can no longer travel. We know the astral plane is green. It is the reverse of our actual reality in the materium world and can be manipulated by time and space. Therefore, the materium was able to be manipulated at that time. No time-space grids, no travel, no crazy dark beings being here, and more importantly, your Space Force is stuck here now. But they take your love in order to do it. They take your life. They take your breath. They take your life force to do it. Those days where you're just worn out and tired, and think about it. You know, how hard you have to work just to have a place to live and food on the table and take care of your family and your kids and your grandkids. All that is by design, and it's all tied to the real debt clock of Earth. On that note, these things are what is dissipating. Therefore, as part of dissipating the debt system, far more complicated than you would ever think in a million years, as part of dismantling the debt system, we also had to find the debt clock. You see, eventually that clock was going to run out anyway. So that's why they continuously create programs for us humans so that we are continuously in debt. And they were about due, because the debt clock was about to run out. They're about due right now, they think anyway, to create another catastrophe in which they are going to come in and save you. Whatever's left of you. Many, many would have died. The rapture situation, and an eruption of a pretty big volcano and a, serious disturbance in the tectonic plates would have made that happen now, wouldn't it? Now, that didn't happen. And the dead clock of Earth was found in the Red Basin of Wyoming. Obviously not in the materium plane in this density, the third density that we all can actually see. Was a giant hovering tetrahedron to which you were all tied to. I actually got stuck here and found out about this because I was trying to transfer money to all of you. I was trying to figure out where we were getting stuck. And all we kept seeing was this, for lack of a better term, an imprint in numbers of a bunch of humans, Homo sapiens, a bunch of Homo sapiens stuck in a pyramid. I'm like, and then there's a cord that goes to the person, multiple cords actually. And I'm like, geez, why? What is this? Where is it? And, eventually we did find it, and it made more sense. Why do they want to go with cryptocurrency? Why do they want to have a digital system? Why do they want to have the digital IDs? They say it's chipping humans and all of this stuff. It's because if you are not constantly indebting yourselves, then the debt clock stops. When the debt clock stops, power going to all of these different systems I just mentioned go away. And the interesting part, right in the center of that pyramid, is the death stone. It's the ego that revolves around it. And, of course, chaos. Out of chaos comes the order. It's a motto of many different groups on this planet. This is the reason why. Without that debt clock running, which it's not there anymore, they can try to create every catastrophic event they want. Time is up, sweethearts. Debt clock's also tied to the moon cycle, which is why every other day ending in Y, they think they're going to get a payment for creating that ego problem, the death problem, the chaos problem that has ensued and plagued this planet for eons. It's ending. Now we just got to deal with a bunch of malfunctioning cyborgs walking around Washington, D.C. and every other government trying to run a country and run a planet. It looks like we could possibly get some help. It looks like there is a mutiny amongst the actual Homo sapiens that worked, for all these people. If that is the case, we could turn this planet around a lot faster. But again, I will repeat, we are prepared to go it alone should it need be. We will restore this planet. We will ensure it happens. We will ensure there is no more chaos and ego running this planet, and we will reconnect and have been working on that reconnection directly to the source blueprint so that everybody will know what to do and what can happen and what can't happen. Your consciousness becomes your own, but source is also there too. It's not part of the blueprint. Look at what they're creating, not part of the blueprint. There has to be a balance in nature, and it's going to take us some time to really understand that balance and agriculture and production, because things have been on the debt clock for so long, we are going to have to learn a whole new way. And it's going to take time, and it's going to start with you. Really, it's going to start with you. Because you understand more by listening to these reports than anybody else does, than any government anywhere, any deep state people, any Satanist, any economist. They're going to spend years trying to figure this out. You know more, and you're ahead of the game. So it's going to be an interesting week. We're going to see if there actually is a mutiny. We'll see. Looks like it's kind of heading in that direction. But we'll see. Big thank you and a shout out to the cowboy, for telling everybody the truth. That really made a big difference, because at least they got answers with proof that this guy really knew what he was talking about. This is the step to freedom. No more debt clock. We are not paying for somebody else's sins. Number one, generational curses and genetic curses and all the other things that were part of your financial system. We don't owe anyone anything anymore. We never really did, actually, in the first place, because they also created the problem. And it's not like Source doesn't see everything. He's got a lot clearer view now that he's been hanging around here, for sure. So, on that note, this has been the October 3rd/4th Global Intelligence Agency report. It's going to be a whirlwind of a week, guys. So hang on to your hats. We might see some big changes happening real soon.